The crowd hushed before the first bell, as if they sensed a storm gathering. Lights dimmed, cameras tilted, and a single figure walked toward the cage with the poise of someone who had already seen the ending. Dakota Ditcheva did not smile, did not nod, did not even glance at the thousands of fans waiting to watch her fail. Across from her, the blonde Irish contender strutted like she owned the night. Shauna "Mama B. Bannon had mocked Dakota's striking all week, calling her one-dimensional and easy prey. She promised a submission clinic. Reporters ate it up. The world expected a brash Irish takeover. But inside the cage, all the noise evaporated. Bannon fired a long side kick, the classic taekwondo feint she loved, then whipped a spinning heel kick that sliced air inches from Dakota's face. The crowd roared. Dakota simply blinked and stepped forward. She caught the next kick, returned fire with a slicing right hand, and let a brutal knee crash into Bannon's ribs. No taunts, no glares, just cold violence. Every exchange grew nastier. Bannon tried to meet her in the center, fists snapping, but Dakota stalked like a shadow. A straight right landed. Another knee folded the Irish woman for a breathless second. Years earlier, Dakota had spent endless nights perfecting those Muay Thai weapons in Thailand. And now every hour of sweat announced itself with a thud that echoed off the canvas. Bannon's reputation as a submission wizard meant nothing. She had already survived hellish kicks in previous bouts, but this was different. Dakota's composure was suffocating. Between rounds, Bannon's corner barked instructions while she clutched at her midsection, eyes betraying the first flicker of doubt. When the second bell rang, Dakota targeted the legs, snapping low kicks into Bannon's knees until her movement slowed. Then she flipped the script, shooting for takedowns of her own. The supposed one-dimensional striker became the wrestling aggressor, dragging Bannon into the fence and pinning her there. Long limbs framed perfect leverage as Dakota ripped short elbows and hammer fists. The crowd gasped at the sudden reversal. Bannon clung on, desperate to turn the bout back to grappling on her terms, but Dakota's strength told the story. A roll through, a quick scramble, and the Brit took the back. Heavy left hands rained down. Commentators who had called Dakota an underdog began to change their tune in real time. By the championship rounds, the match felt less like sport and more like slow-motion destruction. Bannon switched to flashy karate kicks, trying to reclaim momentum, but Dakota shredded her base with inside leg kicks and another barrage of knees. Every strike drew a roar from the English crowd, and each roar seemed to pull more strength from Bannon's fading reserves. The final round brought one last surge of defiance. Bannon pressed forward, swinging for a miracle. Dakota met her in the pocket, landed a knee that snapped her head back, and chased her to the cage with a torrent of punches. The horn saved Bannon from a knockout that felt inevitable. Judges needed only seconds to render a unanimous verdict. Dakota Ditcheva, the new UKFC flyweight champion. She raised her arms without a grin, almost businesslike, before embracing her mother, a former world Muay Thai champion who had drilled every ounce of discipline into her from childhood. That quiet victory summed up Dakota's entire career. Let the fists speak, let the record shout. The Bannon fight was no fluke. Only 2 bouts into her professional life, Dakota already carried the scars and confidence of a veteran. She had terrorized opponents as a teenager in Thailand under the nickname Dangerous D, throwing laser-sharp punches that echoed through humid Bangkok gyms. Transitioning to mixed martial arts barely slowed her down. Her debut showcased relentless striking and unexpected grappling defense as she dismantled Leonora Sylvia, refusing to be bullied in the clinch. That night against Bannon simply made the world notice. Shauna would go on to earn a UFC contract and prove herself a genuine threat at 116 pounds. But none of that erased the lesson she learned in England. Dakota Ditcheva was different. Her next challenge proved it again. Across the cage stood Levi Steedman, a fellow Mancunian with a dangerous submission game and the swagger of a hometown rival. The fight carried local pride and bad blood, a collision of rising stars who had circled each other in the same gyms and regional shows. The opening minute set the tone. Dakota swung a heavy right that just missed, then buried a knee deep into Steedman's body. Ignoring any idea of feeling out, she treated the bout like a street fight with rules. Knees hammered ribs, forcing Levi to shoot for a desperate double-leg takedown. The slam echoed through the arena as Dakota hit the mat for the first real test of her young career. Steedman smothered from top position, but Dakota's calm never wavered. She worked her way back to the fence, slipped to her feet, and fired a crisp right hand that sent Levi stumbling. When the second round opened, Dakota turned predator. Another barrage of knees and hooks cracked against guard and bone. The crowd felt the tide shift. Levi showed grit, countering with another high-impact takedown, but again, Dakota refused to stay down. By the final round, both fighters had a silent agreement. No more games, just violence. They traded in the center, Dakota stalking forward with piston jabs and snapping low kicks until a perfect right-left combination sat Steedman on the canvas. Somehow, Levi rose, clinging on until the horn, but the judges had seen enough. Another unanimous decision. Another night where Dakota proved she could fight anywhere. On the feet, in the clinch, on the mat. Her early career was supposed to be the hardest stretch, the place where prospects falter. Instead, each fight seemed to get easier. She racked up stoppages with ruthless efficiency, elbows and knees slicing through regional opponents like a buzzsaw. When European promoters searched for someone to derail her, they kept discovering the same truth. There was no safe matchup. That momentum carried Dakota to the Professional Fighters League, Europe's most prestigious MMA promotion, where she would face seasoned veterans and former UFC athletes. She arrived without bravado, telling interviewers she had spent the day just getting my hair done. But once the cage door shut, she became a force of nature. The precision Muay Thai that once shook Bangkok now shook entire arenas. Even fighters who had mocked her style, who believed she was just a flashy striker, found themselves broken by elbows, out-wrestled in clinches, and overwhelmed by a gas tank that never emptied. The one-dimensional label became a punchline. The highlight reels tell the story. The front kick that crumpled a favored contender in seconds, the liver shot that froze another mid-combination, the lightning knee that ended a bout before the commentators could finish their opening notes. Each finish carried the same signature: speed without rush, power without wasted motion. For Dakota, these victories were not about fame. She rarely celebrated beyond a brief embrace with her corner, often leaving interviews with little more than a nod. "I just fight whoever they put in front of me," she would say, a sentence that somehow made her even more intimidating. Opponents realized she didn't need to hype herself. The fights were the hype. Shauna Bannon, the Irish rival who once mocked her, eventually climbed into the UFC and rebuilt her reputation with crisp wins and relentless pressure. She became proof of how good Dakota truly was. Every time Bannon's hand was raised on the sport's biggest stage, it reminded fans of the night a young Brit shut her down. What was supposed to be an early test for Dakota had instead become an early warning for the rest of the division. Levi Steedman, too, earned respect for surviving Dakota's knees and right hands that night in Manchester. That bout showed something beyond technique. It revealed Dakota's composure under fire. She had been slammed, controlled, nearly ground down, and still found her way to her feet, still imposed her will. It was the fight that convinced insiders she could handle any storm. As her record grew, so did the stakes. Bigger venues, brighter lights, deeper divisions. Yet the pattern never changed. Dakota adapted, learned, and dismantled. Her game only tightened, her timing only sharpened. Sparring partners spoke of endless rounds where she seemed to predict every move, countering before they even committed. Coaches called her a natural, but the truth was more dangerous. She was a relentless student, always adding weapons, always erasing weaknesses. If you felt the chill of that ascent, now's the time to stay locked in. Share this story with every fight fan who still doubts the silent storm. Drop your predictions. Who should face Dakota next? And how would they survive her relentless precision? And hit that subscribe button because when the lights drop and the crowd goes silent again, you'll want to be there to witness the next chapter of a fighter who might already be the best women's mixed martial artist alive.